Australia heads to the polls tomorrow in an election that pits the current ruling coalition government against the main opposition Labour Party. It could deliver the 8th Prime Minister in just 12 years. Leader of the Liberal Party-led coalition government and incumbent Prime Minister Scott Morrison is pretty much neck and neck with Bill Shorten in the polls. But Labour currently leads with a small margin of 51% to the Conservatives' 49%. Both parties have seen turmoil. Now, former Treasurer Scott Morrison is the third Liberal Party leader in just 4 years. The Labour Party lost office in 2013 after internal feuding saw the ousting of 2 of its prime ministers. Now, for the 16 million eligible voters, there are several key issues dominating the agenda. Among them, climate change, immigration, tax and foreign affairs. Now, that last one is especially crucial as this election will set the stage for Australia's future relationship with China, which is also their largest trading partner. Well, for more on this, we're joined via Skype by Dr. Ian Cook, Senior Lecturer of Australian Politics at Murdoch University. Thank you very much for speaking to us. But first up, will the passing of former Australian Prime Minister Bob Hawke yesterday, do you think his passing will sway voters in any way for tomorrow's election?
I think it will affect some voters. My sense is that it's helped the opposition leader, Bill Shorten, to sort of appear somewhat more human. He's struggled to, voters are not warming to him. They don't tend to trust him, and they see him as sort of a party operator rather than a human being. And he had a good relationship with Bob Hawke, and his distress at Hawke's death has helped, I think, to change people's perception, perhaps soften their perception of Bill Shorten. Now, on the other hand, Scott Morrison has been very effective as a leader, and in some ways by reminding us of the sort of, the easygoing, sort of somewhat unconventional type leader, and so he's been somewhat, in some ways, sort of carrying forward the Hawke tradition. So I think, but for the most part, I think it's affecting Shorten and humanising Bill Shorten.
And how close is this election looking, and why is it so close?
I think that in part it's certainly looking close. That where some of us, between sort of 5 and 10 seats is what we're thinking. Most of us are predicting a Labor win. But as I was saying, Scott Morrison, the Liberal leader, has been quite effective in basically persuading people that there are question marks over the Labor government in terms of economic management, and generally sort of been effective on the campaign trail. And I think he's been a crucial factor in shifting things back toward the coalition government.
There are several key issues dominating the agenda, but which policies do you think have perhaps seized the public's attention, though?
Well, I think economic management, and certainly the Liberal Party and the Liberal National Coalition have been very strong on their credentials as economic managers. They've introduced a budget this year that projecting surpluses, not for at least a year away, but certainly surpluses, which is, we've been in deficit for some time. So they've been running hard on economic management. The Labor Party's been running much harder on equity and fairness and justice in the economy. And so their position has been that whilst we might have economic growth, it doesn't necessarily benefit everyone. So they've been trying to appeal to a sense that the average Australian hasn't been doing so well, despite the fact there's been a good deal of economic good news around. So that's been where they've been sort of putting a lot of their emphasis.
And is that message that they're sort of looking out for the average Australian something that you think is sort of inspiring voter confidence in them?
Well, I mean, I think to some extent, but in doing this, in announcing those sort of policies and projecting them, they've just started talking about spending and certain increases in taxation, and that's sort of worried at least some people in terms of what the effects of those might be on the economy. So while they've been, coming forward in terms of what they were going to do to help, for some people, I think that's sort of raised some of those doubts about their economic management and their credentials as economic managers.
Do you think minor parties might actually play much of a role in deciding the winner, though?
If things get close, perhaps even a little closer than I'm expecting, then minor parties, the Greens and Independents, are looking like they might pick up seats in the lower house of Parliament, the House of Representatives. Our Senate, our upper house, in general returns a significant number of independents and representatives of minor parties, and generally the government doesn't control the numbers in the Senate. So my expectation is at the end of this election that the minor parties and independents in the upper house will be in a crucial position and be important to the government and play an important role in setting policy going forward.
Thank you very much for speaking to us, Dr. Ian Cook, the Senior Lecturer of Australian Politics at Murdoch University.